It just gets worse and worse for them. AM Online, increased number of drivers will never buy an EV, survey finds. And this is by Sean Keywood on the 21st of July 2029. There's the story. Let's have a look what it says. A growing number of British motorists now say they'll never buy an electric car. Not next year. Not when the prices fall. Not when the charging network improves. Never. According to new research commissioned by Bridgestone, 26% of motorists, more than 1 in 4, say they have no intention of ever buying an electric vehicle. Only 16% say they're planning to buy one during the next 12 months. Now, this year, the target is 33%. Next year, it's 38%. So that's not looking very good, is it? It raises a very awkward question. If the transition to electric vehicles is supposedly gathering pace, if motorists are supposedly becoming more confident, and if electric cars are becoming increasingly affordable and convenient, why is outright rejection apparently increasing? Because despite years of publicity, government intervention, manufacturer discounts, salary sacrifice schemes, tax incentives, and relentlessly positive media coverage, a substantial proportion of the British public remains unconvinced. And perhaps motorists aren't confused. Perhaps they've simply looked at the product, examined their circumstances, considered the risks, and decided that an electric car doesn't suit them. Quick one. This bit isn't sponsored, but it is my personal recommendation. I use the high-low band for blood pressure tracking, and it's honestly been a godsend for me. Super easy to use, and I get a much more realistic picture than a one-off reading at the doctor. If you use my link, you get 20% off, plus a 12-month subscription, and I get £25 if your referral is successful. So, thanks if you do. The link's in the description. On with the video. Bridgestone's latest survey reportedly questioned 2,000 UK motorists. The headline figure is that 26% now say they'll never buy an EV. Bridgestone says that the figure has risen from 17% in 2025 and has returned to approximately the level recorded in 2024. So we've gone backwards. The new government advert, all these EV shills, pumping constant clickbaity headlines about how good EVs are, and it's gone backwards. And do you know why I think that is? I think it's because the ordinary man in the street doesn't appreciate being told by these toffee-nosed EV shills that they're uneducated because they don't want an EV. That just makes them not want to buy one even more. There's a major problem with that comparison because Bridgestone's own press release from June 2025 didn't say 17%. It said 27%. The official 2025 Bridgestone release stated that 27% of motorists said they'd never buy an EV. It also said this represented an increase of 5 percentage points over 2 years. So how can the new 2026 release claim the corresponding 2025 figure was only 17%? Was a different question asked? Was a different group of motorists surveyed? Was the 2025 figure subsequently revised? Or is the figure in the latest press release simply wrong? These aren't minor variations. 17% and 27% are separated by 10 percentage points. In a survey of 2,000 people, that represents a difference of around 200 respondents, and it completely changes the story. If the correct 2025 figure was 17%, resistance has increased dramatically to 26%. But if Bridgestone's own published 2025 figure of 27% was correct, then the proportion saying never has actually fallen slightly to 26%. So it's not the same story at all, is it? One version says opposition has surged, the other says it's barely changed. Before anybody builds a dramatic headline around these numbers, Bridgestone should explain precisely where the 17% figure came from. Because you can't tell motorists that survey data demonstrates a major change while apparently contradicting your own previous publication. Putting that discrepancy aside, the underlying concerns revealed by the survey are extremely important. The largest concern is battery longevity and the potential cost of battery replacement. That was mentioned by 55% of respondents. Half were concerned about the cost of charging. 44% were worried about driving range. The same percentage were concerned about the initial purchase price. 43% believed there was still not enough charging points, and 41% were worried about how long an EV takes to charge. These concerns are often dismissed as myths, misinformation, or a lack of education, but that response is becoming increasingly patronising. Battery condition is a perfectly reasonable concern, particularly for someone considering a used electric car. A conventional used car buyer can inspect the engine, listen for mechanical noises, check the service history, and assess many of the vehicle's components. With an electric car, the most expensive component is the high voltage battery. Yet many used EVs are still being advertised without an independent battery state of health percentage. Buyers are expected to spend thousands of pounds without being shown the precise condition of the component that could have the greatest effect on the vehicle's value, range and future usability. So when 55% of motorists express concern about battery life and replacement costs, the answer should not be to tell them that they're misinformed. The answer should be to provide proper independent battery testing and transparent state of health certificates. Give the buyer the exact percentage, show them the battery imbalance, show them the test conditions, show them the remaining warranty, and explain what protection they will have if a serious fault develops. Confidence is not created with a press release. Confidence is created, like everything else, with evidence. Charging costs are another perfectly legitimate concern. The frequently advertised savings associated with electric cars usually depend upon the owner having access to inexpensive domestic electricity, preferably through an overnight tariff. That calculation may work extremely well for someone with a driveway, a home charger, and the ability to charge overnight. But millions of motorists don't have those advantages. If a driver depends heavily upon public rapid charging, the cost comparison can look very different. Public charging can be substantially more expensive than domestic charging, and the result depends on the network, location, charging speed, subscription and time of use. So the phrase "an EV costs less to fuel" is not universally true. It depends entirely on how and where the vehicle is charged. The survey suggests that 50% of motorists remain concerned about charging costs. That doesn't mean half the population has failed to understand electric vehicles. It may mean that they understand that the attractive best case calculation repeatedly presented by EV advocates does not necessarily apply to them. Then there's the charging infrastructure. The number of charging points is often presented as evidence that the problem's been solved, but motorists do not experience the charging network as one enormous national total. They experience an individual charger at a particular location at a particular time. Is it available? Is it working? Watch that last video I did about charging. Honestly, you'll laugh. I absolutely feel for the guy that couldn't charge his car. Is it suitable for their car? Well, obviously on this occasion, no. Is somebody else using it? Does the payment system work? What does it cost? And how long will they need to remain there? 43% of respondents said there were still not enough chargers, while 41% remained concerned about charging times. Those issues matter because consumers aren't comparing an EV with travelling on horseback. They're comparing it with a petrol or diesel car that can usually be refueled in several minutes and driven for hundreds and hundreds of miles. An electric vehicle doesn't need to be merely usable. For mass market adoption, it needs to offer enough advantages to persuade people to replace something they already understand and trust. The industry response usually follows a familiar pattern. We're told that motorists need more education. We're told that people become more positive after driving an EV. There is some evidence supporting that argument. A separate 2026 Cox Automotive survey of 2008 UK drivers found that 95% of the EV drivers questioned said they'd choose electric again within the next 3 years. Among people who had test-driven an EV, that fell to 63%. Among non-EV drivers without that experience, it was only 24%. That tells us that many existing EV owners are satisfied, and that should be acknowledged. However, the surveys that they usually do tend to be with EV owners. Now, if you've still got an EV, the chances are that you're happy with it. The people they should be asking, the way you find out what's wrong is not by asking people who like a product reviews. Okay? Some like your business, some don't. You learn more off the people who don't like your business than you do off the people that do like your business. And that's the same with EV drivers or ex-EV drivers. They would learn more if they asked the people why they'd got rid, and trust me, that figure is rubbish. When you go on the private to trade websites and you see how long they've kept the vehicle for, you'll see that that's just a joke. But for this video, we'll pretend it's right. So for the right driver, with home charging, predictable journeys and a suitable vehicle, an electric car can work extremely well. I own and enjoy an electric Citroën myself. The point isn't that every electric vehicle is bad. The point is that being satisfied with an EV does not prove that an EV is suitable for everyone else. I would say that my Citroën would not suit 99.999 recurring percent of drivers. It wouldn't suit the needs. So all the salesman has to do is find a car that suits your needs, and you should go away blissfully happy. If he sells you one that doesn't suit your needs, then that creates buyer's remorse. And before you know it, he's selling it and he's telling all his mates down the pub that that was the worst car he's ever had. That is not something you want. You're better not selling a car than selling a car that makes somebody unhappy. Existing owners are a self-selecting group. Many bought an EV because their home, finances, driving pattern and personal preferences made one practical. That doesn't automatically translate to someone living in a terraced house, towing regularly, covering unpredictable distances, or buying an older used vehicle on a limited budget. High satisfaction among people who deliberately choose an EV is useful information, but it doesn't eliminate the barriers facing people who haven't chosen one. That's what you need to find. The Bridgestone survey also contains another figure that deserves scrutiny. It says 53% of motorists expect to buy an EV within the next 5 years, while another 7% remain undecided. But this sits rather awkwardly alongside the figure showing that only 16% intend to buy one within the next 12 months. Stated future intentions aren't the same as completed purchases. Someone may believe they'll buy an EV within 5 years because they expect legislation to force the issue. They may assume petrol and diesel alternatives will become unavailable. They may simply think technology will improve by then, or they may give a positive answer to a hypothetical question and make a completely different decision when it actually comes to spending their own money. The real test isn't what someone tells a survey company that they might do by 2031. The real test comes when they stand in a dealership, compare the prices, examine the finance payments, value the part exchange and decide which car to take home. That's where hypothetical enthusiasm meets financial reality. The government is attempting to accelerate this transition through regulation and financial support. Manufacturers are being required to achieve increasingly demanding zero-emission sales targets. Discounts, finance contributions and government grants can make new electric cars appear more attractive, but none of that guarantees genuine consumer demand. You can compel manufacturers to supply electric cars. You can punish them for selling too many petrol vehicles. You can subsidise the purchase price and you can pre-register unwanted stock to satisfy a target. But you can't force a private customer to genuinely desire the product. And when policy moves faster than natural demand, someone eventually carries the financial cost. It may be the manufacturer through discounts. It may be the leasing company through weaker residual values. It may be the dealer holding depreciating stock. Or it may be the private owner discovering that the car has lost considerably more value than expected. That's why consumer resistance matters. It affects not merely new registrations, but the entire used car market beneath them. There's also something revealing about Bridgestone's response to its own survey. The company says the motor industry needs to continue supporting drivers, building confidence and addressing concerns. That's reasonable. But the press release then promotes Bridgestone's EV-ready tyre range and its Turanza 6 product. There's nothing wrong with a tyre company promoting tyres, but we should recognise this document for what it is. It's not an independent academic study of transport policy. It's corporate consumer research attached to a commercial press release. The complete questionnaire, response options and detailed demographic breakdown don't appear in the published release. Without that information, we can't fully assess how the questions were worded, whether respondents could choose multiple concerns or whether the sample was weighted to represent the UK driving population. And the apparent conflict between the published 2025 and 2026 comparisons makes that transparency even more important. Nevertheless, the broad message is difficult to ignore. A large selection of the British public remains unconvinced by electric cars. Their concerns centre on batteries, charging costs, range, purchase price, infrastructure and charging time. Those aren't absurd objections. They are the fundamental practical and financial considerations involved in owning the vehicle. The EV industry will not resolve them by repeatedly calling motorists confused. It will not resolve them through carefully selected running cost calculations based upon cheap domestic electricity. It won't resolve them through carefully selected running cost calculations based upon cheap domestic electricity, and it won't resolve them by presenting fleet registrations, salary sacrifice vehicles and manufacturer pre-registrations as proof that ordinary private buyers are enthusiastically embracing the transition. The product must work for the customer, the price must make sense, the charging arrangements must be practical, the battery condition must be transparent, and the residual value risk must be honestly explained. Until that happens, the number of people refusing to buy an EV may remain stubbornly high, and attempts to push the market faster through mandates, penalties and subsidies may actually make public resistance worse, because motorists don't like being told that they must buy something. They especially don't like being told that their perfectly reasonable concerns are merely myths. So perhaps the most important lesson from this survey isn't that motorists require more education. Perhaps the motor industry and the government need to start listening, because you can manipulate the supply, you can subsidise the price, you can massage the registration figures, but you can't manufacture genuine demand. And according to this survey, more than 1 in 4 motorists are sending an extremely clear message. They don't want an electric car and they have no intention of buying one. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye bye.